and welcome to Destroy Before Listening, Episode 3, which is the conversation between myself, Pete Byrne, and Steve Strode, who plays guitar in Fret, and he also runs Cruel Nature Records, which he's grown over the 2010s via his Bandcamp page mainly. He was also one half of Distraction Records during the 2000s, and I don't know, we met sometime in 2005, I think, maybe MySpace, I don't know. We became good friends, and we'd played a lot of the Distraction weekend fests which he put on, and he was always supportive of the projects we were involved with and things. It was good here to find out about his history and how he came to Newcastle and things. The last track is by Fret, which is him, Rob Woodcock, and Cath, and it's a track from their last album. So please subscribe, share, just put the word out to people who might be interested in this. And there was also an Instagram account which is @DestroyBeforeListening, where relevant photos and flyers and things will be posted. So thank you. I've been waiting for you. Wanted to start this by asking about you. Well, you didn't grow up in Newcastle. You grew up in Bristol, and how your early influences, or the kind of how you became exposed to, punk music, I suppose, or independent music, and then ending up in Newcastle, really.
So yeah, I grew up in Bristol, but I probably left there when I was about 19 or something like that, maybe a little bit older. And I remember when I was first living in Bristol, I kind of got into indie music, as they call it there, through the brother of a friend of mine who happened to go to Leeds University, and he got us into things like bands like Joy Division and stuff like that. And because he had all his records and things, and he used to do tapes. And then when I started going to gigs, first gig I saw was Smiths, and then Susie and the Banshees after that. And I went to see New Model Army as well. And when we were talking before this about how gigs and that in the past used to have a lot of tension and stuff. Well, that New Model Army was probably the third gig that I went to see when I was kind of still fairly young teenager. Wasn't, and someone got stabbed at that gig. So it just going to kind of the point that was saying,
Why did someone get stabbed at a New Model Army gig?
No idea, man. I really don't.
Didn't have dreadlocks.
Probably, yeah. I remember it being a pretty raucous gig. People were it was in the Beer Keller, which was quite a big venue in Bristol. It was Bristol's kind of Riverside, I guess, to some degree. And although you had the Tropic Club as well, which was good. And there was people were jumping around on tables and stuff like that. Obviously, New Model Army could rouse the crowds. Yeah. But and then basically me and we used to just hang around. The usual sort of thing. We'd hang around venues and just watch whatever bands were going on and that. And Bristol had some pretty good venues. They still did them. And you were starting to get all the American bands come over and things as well. So bands like Sonic Youth and stuff. And then Newport was quite close by. So we used to go over to New TJ's Disco in Newport and see, again, sort of, a lot of the American bands over there. But then also in Bristol itself, you had the kind of Holzera Records thing going on, which, to be honest, I wasn't really into that stuff at the time because I liked music which was a bit harder and everything. This is why I leaned more to, things like Swans and everything. But now, years later, I kind of think I might have missed out a bit on there because, that was all kicking off in there. But no, I left Bristol because I went to Newcastle Poly as a mature student after working for a few years. I say a few years. I've been working for probably about 3 years when I left there because I started work when I was about 16. And I just managed to get on to a course at Newcastle Poly. And then it was the Riverside after that.
Yeah. So when you were saying the stuff you were seeing in Bristol, what time period is this?
This would have been from about 1986. It would have been. So I saw Sonic Youth play and Up to play in '86, and then it was from up until, and then I left Bristol end of the '80s.
End of the '80s. What kind of record shops? What were the record shops like?
They were brilliant. There was Revolver Records, which was I don't think that's there anymore. That was kind of the main one, because they were also like a distributor, I think, as well. Revolver.
Yeah.
So there was them. And it was great because you would go in there on a Saturday morning, and the guy who ran the shop, you get to know him, and that, like in that High Fidelity film, it's just like that kind of shit where you'd be in there all the time and walk in, and the guy would say, "Oh yeah, I got a new record for you to check out." And I remember he did that with Dinosaur Jr. That's how I got to know about Dinosaur Jr. because it just kind of landed in the shop, and it was him, you living all over me, and he was like, "Oh yeah, I got a record here that he'd really like." And then there was a few other ones as well on that kind of area. They had a few around there. So there was a record shop called Tony's as well, which used to have a lot of like secondhand psychedelic sort of stuff. Like get all those sort of like Pebbles and Nuggets compilations of things. And then there was this place called Plastic Wax, which again, was really good for like lots of secondhand things. But then, I mean, you could get records all over the place back then, even on the, like the markets and that, Bristol had the kind of equivalent of what is the Quayside Market. And there was like record stores down there and record fairs. And so you were kind of spoilt for choice a lot.
I was going to say, second-hand record shops where you're getting a lot of kind of ex-punks or like junkies and alcoholics just kind of trading their record collections in.
Yeah.
It's pretty rare for that kind of thing to happen now, I think. I mean, you see a lot in, I don't know, charity shops even. They just must like price the stuff straight off like the highest Discogs price or something for,
I think Discogs has got a lot to answer for in that respect, I mean, back then, if you took, because I remember selling a load of records once, which I then probably ended up rebuying a lot of them, to Plastic Wax, which was a secondhand one. And I remember at the time, thinking, "Oh, that guy's totally ripped me off there." But you're right now, like, if you take charity shops, I've bought quite a few decent records from charity shops in the past and that, but I guess it depends on the area. There's some areas now, you go in there and you don't get anything of any quality anymore.
No.
I think the last decent record I bought in a charity shop was probably that Man to Man Paris one, or whatever, Mel Stripper. And that was in Hexham. Got an awesome cover of that one, like it's the one that in the one to sort of hide away from your grandma,
So you moved up to Newcastle in the late 80s then?
Yeah, it's 89.
Okay, so how did you find moving from Bristol to Newcastle then?
Quite strange to start with, because I basically moved into a flat in Benwell with someone I didn't know. Because it was all quite rushed, because it wasn't like one of these things where it was like, oh yeah, I knew in May what I was going to be doing in October. I think if I remember rightly, kind of like similar to how I've done things a lot in the past, I just kind of like jacked me job in. I managed to get myself onto this, it was computer studies course, as they called it then. It was just like an HND. Yeah. And the thing, I think it was timing was quite good then, because not a lot of people were interested in that stuff. So what they were trying to do is actually trying to fill the course. And I can remember actually having the chat with the person about the course on the phone, and I'd said something about how I used computers or whatever as part of my job at work, which was complete crap. And then they just took us on there. And I think I found, if I remember rightly, I found out in the summer that I would be starting in September, and I had something like a month or something like that to find somewhere to live. So I didn't know anything about Newcastle at all. Didn't know anything about the areas or anything like that. So I ended up living in Benwell because, one, it was close to the city centre, and two, it was like dirt cheap. Yeah, it was like a tenner a week I was paying in rent then.
Yeah.
And it was me and some lad, Damien, from Liverpool, both living in this ground floor flat in Benwell. It's good fun.
How easily did you fall into the same scene, like record shops and gigs?
Yeah, well, I knew about Riverside because I, like a lot of people, used to get the NME and things like that. And then I used to get it like every week. And I can remember when I was coming up there, and I used to see, at that time, you were getting, Bristol was pretty good for gigs, but Newcastle was like 10 times better. And I would look at listings, and bands who I was into were coming over, and I would see them see that they were playing Newcastle all the time. Because if you think about it, it makes kind of sense, really, because it's like if they're doing a tour and you're heading up to Scotland or coming down, it just makes sense to stop with Newcastle. And I'd see all these great bands playing who quite often wouldn't go anywhere near Bristol. So one of the first things I did in like the first week I came over was I just went and checked out where the Riverside was, and I just went down to it, and I think I probably saw like 3 gigs or something like that in the first week. And then I was just going and watching bands all the time. And initially I went along to them just, either with the lad who I was sharing the flat with or just by myself. But then, you start sort of like getting in with people who are into the same things, and what it's like. It all kind of, builds from there.
So can you remember some good early gigs that you saw when you arrived here?
Yeah, I'll tell you what does help is there's a thing on Facebook, right, where some guy, and what he does is he posts up, on this day in whenever, right. So and so played at Riverside, and I found that's pretty good for reminding me of gigs I've saw, because I've forgotten quite a few, but ones that are standout ones. So I saw that Nirvana one that everyone goes on about, where they were supporting Tad. Yeah, I've still got the poster for that as well, because that was the thing. He always used to sort of like nick a poster after the gig, and I had all my walls covered with them. And when we moved into kind of like a bigger shared house, we'd have all the house covered with them. And I've hung on to a few of them. Spaceman 3, Loop, Galaxy 500. The Hypnotics, bands like that. It was Fugazi. Well, I saw them in Bristol as well. And
that's cool. I only saw them the one time, which was in 99, 98, or 98, I think. I think it was End Hits. And it was the end days of kind of, the Riverside as well. I don't think it lasted much longer. But it was it just brought every kind of knacker out of the woodwork from like a 20-mile radius. There's people shouting, obviously people wanted to hear Minor Threat songs.
Oh, yeah.
There was just some scary individuals at that gig, as well.
Yeah.
Like big, nasty looking people in that.
You get that at a lot of gigs like that. It's even now, isn't it? If you go and watch some kind of old bands from there, they bring kind of like everyone out.
Yeah.
I saw Codeine play out there. They were really good. Yeah, and then the time after that I saw them was when they were at ATP. Yeah, that time.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, they were class. And Girls Against Boys. Yeah, I saw them.
No, just the flashback there to you saying the Codeine gig, because I just remember it was you and Daz. Oh, funny. It was like you and Daz were like really kind of, I don't know, going for it or something, and like the last kind of point I saw you both had your shirts off and you were like, fucking come on.
Yeah, that was well. I remember I ended up like it was
It was
Slayer. Yeah, Slayer ended up
hilarious.
like completely ripping me jeans at Slayer in the mosh pit, like totally like whole leg getting ripped down to the point that they were only good for shorts.
that was oh, that was yeah, that was good. That was good. It's good bill, good lineup for the whole weekend, really.
Yeah, no, it really was.
So did you? Well, back onto Newcastle. So did you get in on record shops up here as well? Because there was some goodness on Volume.
Volume for sure. That was the first one I checked out because, again, I'd kind of heard about that. That was great. And then I think a little bit later there was a record shop called Surface Noise sprung up.
Yeah, that was like later on. That was probably about 97.
Yeah, that was RPM. Always been there. Another place that I really liked as well, because the thing is well, we might go on to it a bit, right? But we were kind of like talking a bit before about Britpop and pop and stuff like that, right? Well, that Britpop was a kind of point when, because I'd all grown up in Bristol and that, I'd always also been into kind of like a lot of like, I don't know, not dance music, but like reggae and stuff like that, and I really got into the whole sort of jungle stuff and everything like that in the early 90s and everything. So and that was growing along, and then when Britpop came along, that kind of put me off to some degree, like guitar bands and stuff. So I just sort of like totally got into kind of like like techno and everything like that, and then hardcore and things. I remember I used to go to Bass Generator. Do you remember Bass Generator?
Oh yeah, I remember. Yeah, it was on the way to the quayside, wasn't it? Like a little
class,
little shop on it. Yeah,
Saturday afternoon in there, and you go in the basement down there, and it's just like a massive party. No one used to buy records. Like it was brilliant. So yeah,
I didn't really. Well, I remember going in there like once or twice, but because my friend was into that stuff, but like I just kind of, when it came to that type of thing, I was just strict lines, wasn't interested.
Yeah.
So it would just be like the second-hand shops and second-hand. There was about fuck me thinking about it. There was like probably a little trip of probably 8 to 10 shops you could do, just all afternoon on a Saturday or something, looking at records.
That's what it used to be, didn't it? On a Saturday, you just go out and just trawl around record shops, even if you weren't buying anything or whatever. Just and that was, you'd find somebody, go and ask them to play it and stuff like that, or just hang out and listen to things.
That was the kind of thing where you could, you could make mistakes one week, but then kind of trade them in a week or two later.
Yeah.
For some other records, you probably get fucking ripped off, like. But I don't remember the second-hand prices. They always used to want you to like do trade-in because you get more money.
Yeah.
And they wouldn't have to pay you. So
Pet Sounds as well. Remember that one that used to be in Old Eldon Garden? That was good for picking up all sort of, again, like 60s sort of garage bands and things like that.
There was always loads of like SST records in there. They always had all the Black Flag records in there. But they would absolutely fuck you over, like, if you wanted to trade your records in there, sell your records. Guy was a bastard, like.
Yeah.
Yeah. And because he used to sell the, because it was next to the Greenwell, like metalers or alternative people hung out, so he would sell loads of bootleg merch as well. There was just some really bad, like Metallica, Green Day, Pearl Jam, all that sort of shit. Just bootleg t-shirts, no shame.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I remember them. I think I've still got a 13th Floor Elevators t-shirt knocking around that I got from there, and an MC5 one as well.
Well, there are exceptions to the poor stuff, but I'm sure he sold more shit Green Day t-shirts.
Green Day t-shirts.
Yeah, bootleg ones, yeah. So that was the 90s when you were kind of more into techno and
Yeah,
I guess going to clubs and things and
yeah, getting off my
all
head
that
and
scene.
stuff. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I don't know.
Some of that had to do as well with the people I was sharing, the house with and stuff like that at the time.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So I guess doing a computer course in the early 90s, like it's the prime time for like IT, the internet was just kind of around the corner.
Yeah.
Nobody really saw that one.
They didn't.
At the time, nobody really saw it. No?
They didn't. I mean, like we used to have this like messaging system on campus, which it was like would have been like a precursor really to
It was
all
like
of that
electric
stuff.
bulletin board system or something. Wasn't
Yeah. It was called, the thing we used to use was called Janet, and which stood for something, and it was like it basically allowed you to communicate across all universities and things and colleges and what in the UK, and you would set, similar to what you do now, you would just set up a profile and everything like that. And then and it was just really rudimentary sort of like messaging done through some kind of like VME system, like mainframe based stuff.
Yeah, it's just crazy to think about now.
It is.
Like how primitive it was, even like it was the internet, but it was a very primitive version of the internet. And now you just, don't know, it's like different times. So how did your studies kind of prepare or feed into the kind of later half of the 90s when you would have been, when that would have been kicking off a bit more?
Yeah, so just I was a bit of a hobbyist, right? Because I mean, like, in the really early days of computing, I used to have like I had a Spectrum, and
Yeah.
I remember at school they used to have like BBC computers, and so I did things like that.
Acorn
Electron, yeah. I remember them, yeah. But it was I must admit, like, I wasn't massively serious about it when I was doing, because I think I probably just used aside from the course was an opportunity to, like, one, go and live somewhere else, and secondly to try and just do something different, because I'd kind of just been doing, I guess a lot of jobs that weren't going anywhere, you know what I mean, like casual work and things.
Mm-hmm.
And also another reason why I did it is because a lot of my mates from around that time in Bristol had kind of started moving away for similar sort of things. But I do, and not surprisingly though, I did end up, that's kind of the area I ended up going into work in. And so when I finished doing the course, I went back to Bristol for a bit and did, for a few months down here. And then just by chance, I landed a job back up in Newcastle. So I moved back up there, and I was like keeping on a mate's sofa for a few weeks whilst working and that, and before I managed to find somewhere to rent. And then that's it. I've never left really since.
Being it,
Yeah. I did spend a year in Reading for a bit, but that was when I was part of the course I was doing. It had like a year where placement year where you go and work in industry for a bit. That was down in Reading.
Yeah. So then, next decade, the 2000s. How did that's pretty different because you started doing. Would it be? Well, it's the start of Distraction Records, isn't it?
Yeah. So I started doing music stuff again towards the end of the 90s, because when I was in bands and that when I was living in Bristol, but trying to get gigs back in Bristol back then, I imagine it's probably the same now. It was really difficult because it was quite cliquey, and a lot of venues in that insisted on having demos and things before they would sort of consider giving you a show. And when you're just kind of like a bunch of naive teenagers, who don't really know what's going on, it can be quite intimidating sometimes. But yeah, we were kind of like, so I'd been playing bands in Bristol until I left. So not massively different as well from the sort of stuff that I've always done, which is just really trying to play the music that I like listening to, you know. And then, but then when I moved up here, apart from it was a couple of bands I did with people who I was sharing with and everything, and we would go down to First Ave and rehearse and everything. But you know, I think we maybe did a couple of gigs, but never really did anything. Kind of didn't do anything like publicly from a music point of view until back end of the 90s, early 2000s, where, like you say, I started doing the Distraction Records thing, and then also, you know, doing Tears of Abraham and things like that.
Yeah, I remember that because sorry, that was the first time that I was trying to think how first kind of came into the same like space, and it was I don't know. I mean, it was like you and Daz. I think it was someone, or maybe you'd sent a. I mean, fuck knows. This was probably the, you know, MySpace or some shit like that. And that was how I knew about you and Daz, because you were doing like the Tears of Abraham stuff.
Yeah, I was trying to think actually about that the other day, you know, and how it all came off again.
Well, it kind of came off in the same way that it was around the same time period. It just started happening somehow, and
yeah,
it's started. I can't trying to think of that myself, you know.
Because I still went to gigs and things in the, you know, in the sort of like during the 90s and that, and you know, and was still going to the Riverside and that. I was still going to watch bands. I can remember all the Slamp stuff going off, and you know, I saw some of those shows as well. And I remember like seeing they were going to the Cumberland Arms, and I remember seeing Royal Trucks play at the Cumberland Arms. That was like an immense show, that. But I wasn't really doing anything myself. I was trying to think, you know, what I can't remember now why I started thinking, oh, you know, how I'm going to do a band again or something like that. And then I remember like how doing the distraction stuff, how that came about is it was just you use your sort of thing where you've got a bunch of mates and you're all playing bands and you think, well, let's just put a gig on. And I remember one of the first ones we did was at the Shive or Dog and Parrot or whatever it was calling itself back then, and we just hired the room upstairs and had like 5 bands on or something like that.
Yeah.
And then, you know, there was all those things, because like that Protect and Survive nights and things, I used to go to some of them sort of things, you know. So I guess we were just following those similar sort of examples. And then I think I got to know about you guys because we got friendly with like Ben and Haas, you know, from Jazz Finger. Yeah. And they were kind of, you know, and somehow ended up getting introduced, you know, hearing about you guys. And I think I probably saw one of your shows before I ever got in contact or anything.
Yeah, because all I remember specifically was you doing the Distraction, like you'd done. It was like a 2-day thing, a weekend.
Yeah.
And then you would have kind of all the more one style popular, I suppose, or a bit more indie style on one night. And then the other night would just be like a free for all kind of local knackers, such as us.
Yeah, well, we got
just fun. Just some of the stuff. I mean, it just seems kind of bizarre that like the venue actually kind of let you get away with some stuff, I think.
Did you ever come to that when we put VVM on? It was absolute carnage, that.
No, I didn't. No, I remember the because I was going to ask about the.
Whitehouse.
I remember the Whitehouse because that was great. That was great fun. I thought
that was good though.
Really, really fun. Like, because I wasn't a big Whitehouse fan or anything, but then live it was great. You know, these kind of skinny guys with like the glasses on with the shirts off, like a kind of pantomime almost. They were kind of.
It was brilliant, that, right? And how that came about is that I think me and Daz went to see Kraftwerk in Manchester, and we were on the train on the way back, and I don't know how it came, you know, why we thought about it. And we thought, you know, we were just trying to think of people, you know, we could put on and stuff. And we said, oh yeah, let's stick Whitehouse on. And I remember getting contact with their booking agent, and it all kind of like started moving from there. But then things were going a bit slow, and we're having, the usual sort of conversations about fees and stuff. And then I went to visit my mum and dad, and I remember I was at my parents' home, and then my phone went, and I just sort of like answered. It was, a bit similar to the story you were saying about, with Julian Cope and that. And I just sort of answered it and said, hello. And it was just like a really sort of like well-spoken voice. And the other goes, hello, this is William Bennett. And I was like, what? Like that. And he was phoning up because he got pissed off with the booking agent, right? Just screwing things around. And he just basically said, look, let's just deal directly now. And so, we just spoke directly with him over the show and everything like that and getting it sorted. Of course, Philip Best did his consumer electronics thing as a support, and we put them up in a hotel on Osborne Road. Just like really canny guys, so like really good.
So was it a decent tour? I remember it being like quite a popular gig, so you must have done okay from...
Yeah, well, because Ben Wilkinson from who was in Jazz Finger at the time kind of like jointly promoted it with us. There was I think we did another show with him as well, and it was quite popular because I think Whitehouse had played every 10 years or something like that in Newcastle. The first time was in '84 at Morden Tower. Then I think they did one at the Cumberland in 10 years later, and then this was like 10 years after. But they'd always had like a bit of a dodgy rep in Newcastle because of that gig in '84. And I can remember getting some people were sort of like saying to me and Daz and stuff, what are you putting them on for and stuff like that, But it ended up being a decent enough show, and it was the last time they played here, I think, from what I can remember.
Yeah, that was fun. So did this, I kind of think, well, obviously the label must have come before the promotion, did it, or similar?
Yeah, it did, and it wasn't. I think the label came because what happened is similar to putting on gigs. Is that
this is Distraction.
Yeah. We've thought similar approach to putting on gigs. The sort of do-it-yourself attitude where it's like, oh yeah, we'll just get a bunch of bands together, all mates and stuff, and stick one on. I thought I would like stick out a CDR, right, with some mates bands and that on there. And then I thought it would be a good idea to make it look like it was a label compilation, even though the label didn't exist or anything.
Yeah.
But then, of course, once you've done something like that, then that's it. It does exist because it did a load of them. Yeah, so it must have done about 100 copies or something, sent them out all over the place. I think like the Crack reviewed it or someone like that as well. And they started going on about this sort of new label and everything. And then of course you end up getting swamped with people sending demos and submissions and things. And then it all just kind of like spawns from there. And then before you know it, you're running a label, even though you might not have intended to. And then the whole promotion thing came in because we kicked off because we thought it would be good to do
promote it.
Yeah, exactly. Do weekenders and put gigs on and stuff like that, and then it just kind of went from there.
So what was the kind of basis or the kind of ethos of like the type of music that you would gravitate towards, or the both of you could agree on like releasing together?
Yeah, I think it's kind of like how I do things now. Really, it's just down to where stuff that we like. And I mean, Daz might have different sort of like opinion or recollections and that, but it was largely down to that. We'll just put things out and do things. It's like, I think in terms of like the releases that we did on Distraction, though, kind of different to why I do things on Cruel Nature. And it was because we were sticking a lot of stuff out on vinyl. It was just really bloody expensive, and you end up getting constrained from that point of view. And then we got like some distribution deal with Cargo, because prior to that I'd just been doing I had like a network of sell and return set up across the UK, where I would just sort of send records off to Normal Records and people like that, and then a month or so later check up and see how they'd done, and same with Rough Trade and people like that. And then Cargo kind of stepped in, and once they kind of stepped in, it got a bit more formal. It became a bit, they were all about shifting units and everything like that, And both of us, the pair of us, just used to have loads of boxes of unsold vinyl and that knocking around at home, and you think, no, this is getting a bit ridiculous.
Yeah. What would you, because, I don't know too much about it, like what would you say there was that band Warm Digits became they've become quite a big band now, I suppose, on like relative terms to like starting out on a smaller independent label such as Distraction at the time.
Yeah, they kind of came. They started out on Distraction kind of at the point when I was kind of like I'd had enough of it really, and I was kind of Daz was mainly dealing with everything because I was I had a lot of shit going on in my personal life I was having to deal with, and so and also I couldn't really afford to sort of put much more into putting records out and that. So I think they joined Distraction towards the end of when I was involved with it. But yeah, I think they got a lot of they obviously got a lot of attention, and that kind of led to to some degree where they are, because they're on Memphis Industries now. But we had put stuff out. Steve Jeffries, who's in Warm Digits, we had put a record out for one of his things, Cathode, prior to that.
Okay.
We even had Maximo Park send us a demo right in the very early days, and I remember and I remember actually replying back and I said to them at the time, well, yeah, I didn't say it, but I said to them, like, I think I said something like along the lines of, I don't think we're going to be able to give you what you want,
What, like a big fat guarantee?
Yeah, like, we're like, I remember listening to it and I thought, this all sounds all right and that, but we're just sort of like a little small kind of like bedroom run thing. You know what I mean? We're never going to make people sort of like stars on it or whatever. And I remember, I'm pretty sure we went back because we had them on at a couple of early gigs, weekenders and things. Mm-hmm. And then I remember sending some back, to those sort of lines. Probably best thing I could have done, I could have killed a few people's careers if I'd said, yeah, we'll sort you out.
Nobody would have heard. Well, yeah,
exactly. No one would have heard of them.
Like a curse on them and the death of the band. So that leads into you wanting to do more of a smaller scale operation, which would be Cruel Nature, like your tapes.
Yeah. So how that came about again, so I had sort of a bit of a break from doing anything like music related or whatever, well, in public anyway. And then I've always been...
because there was Mind Kinder, I think that was the first time we kind of came into contact.
That Mind Kinder stuff, I was just arsing around with noise sort of things, wasn't I? Just trying things out and that, and it was very easy to do because I could just do a lot of it from home and that, and I didn't really have to go in public. But then what kind of surprised me about it though is that it seemed to go down well with some people and that, I remember there was some folks in Ireland who I used to kind of collaborate with and everything on the Haunted Trail label, those guys. So yeah, I was doing that, but then how I got into doing stuff on the tapes, because I'd all kind of turn it full circle back round to when I was in Bristol before I moved up here. A lot of the gigs I used to go to, I used to record them, and there was a big thing back then in the 80s and the 90s and that of like trading sort of like live tapes and bootlegs and things like that, and so I used to do quite a bit of that. So I was putting a lot of stuff out in tapes and things like that, through adverts in things like the Enemy and whatnot, like mail order. in the back end of the 80s, and I was still recording home demos and that on tapes because I had like one of them Tascam 4 tracks that I've still got. I was still recording a load of stuff like that. So how Cruel Nature came about is I was just looking around for. I wasn't a fan really of CDRs, and vinyl was too expensive, and so I just thought, well, why not try putting some stuff out on tape, because I knew there was quite a few tape labels still knocking around. So I just bought a load of stuff up from Tape Line, and I remember I didn't do anything with it for a while, and then it was a kind of similar sort of thing where to Distraction, where what it was is that it was a mate's band in Bristol. They'd sent some stuff through, and I thought, I'll just try putting that out on as a tape under a guise of a label, and just went from there.
So what year would this been? Did you foresee it kind of?
That was
being dozens of releasing like dozens of things since that time.
So that was in 20. So Cruel Nature formally started in 2013, but I had it had probably been about a year or so before that when I'd bought a lot of tapes up, and I had a thought about putting stuff out. And then it just kind of grew from there. It started off with just mainly being really kind of extreme sort of sounds. A lot of it was like noise and power electronics and that. But then as the kind of like you get more varied sort of demos and things come in, or you see more bands, and I guess it's to some degree how the kind of music evolves, because like how we were talking earlier about back in the 90s, and that you would have all these sort of big noise gigs, 90s and early 2000s. We'd have like 10 bands on a function room, and there'd be loads of that sort of stuff on, and it was power electronics was like really sort of at the fore. But then flip that around now, and it would be like you'll go somewhere and there'd be like half a dozen doom bands playing or something, and so you find that kind of like I don't know, it's not the trend or whatever, but as you go through, things start changing, and you find that some of the demos and stuff you get sent through are all, at one time it all be noise, another time it might be all black metal, and it's just whatever people are into really. It just kind of expanded from there.
How have you found like moving from your Distraction times of like your physical products and things, and then like moving to a smaller scale like tapes, and then those being streamable as well, or things like streaming? So things don't really exist even anymore, do they? You're not sending anything, or you're not going to the post office to send anything, but people are hearing things that way. Like, how have you found that?
You get hit with more things now, I think, to some degree, with because it's so easy to actually record something and then share it with the world now. And this might come out the wrong way, right? But I think I'm trying to think of the right words. I guess what I'm saying is, to some degree, what it means is that there's a lot of saturation, and it can be sometimes a bit difficult to find the gems amongst.
That's why people need like the filters, don't they? That's why they need the labels to kind of almost do some of the work for them in a way.
Yeah, I guess what I'm saying on that one is that if you go back to kind of like pre-internet and when it wasn't so easy to do that, you have to put, as an artist or a band or something like that, you had to put a lot of effort into actually getting your music out there. You would have to probably go somewhere to record it. You would have to pay to get it recorded. So the fact that you're having to pay for it and having to have studio time and that, it means that you put a lot of work into making sure that it sounded exactly right. And then which still goes on now. But yeah, like you say, it's just like there's there's a lot more filtering that needs to go on. But then it's also a lot easier now, I guess, to some degree, as a label as well, to kind of get get yourself out there. But and I just, what I've found with Cruel Nature is although we provide streaming, you can stream through Bandcamp and people can download digital versions and stuff like that. It's still very much seen, people still very much come to it to buy things in physical format as the tapes. So, and it doesn't have to be as well that that they can check it out for, because there's been some releases that I've put up there and it's been they haven't been able to stream them. It's just been purely just a tape with a description of what the music is, kind of like what it would have been years ago when you would be reading in a fanzine or something, and it would have been a new band, and all you would read is a description that someone's written about it. Which I guess in some degrees that's the other thing. Reviewers used to play a massive part in progressive music way back before the internet and that, because you would read a review of a record, and unless you'd heard it on John Pill or someone like that, or you went to the record shop and asked someone to play it, the chances are you would be buying records based on what you've read.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, whereas now you can actually just dip in and actually listen to something and then think, I might buy that, or I'm not going to buy that.
And this is through it's just through a phone. It's like right there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I couldn't think about it, mate. How difficult it was to kind of uncover certain things. It's just like it's in your pocket waiting for you to type it in, and it's just there.
Yeah.
So I know what you mean. Yeah. You used the label as well to kind of as a base for Fret, which would be like joining a band lineup again and releasing and recording as a band. So just like a bit about that as well.
Yeah, it's like a lot again with that. It's like a lot of things where things just happen without unintentionally to some degree. So how Fret came about, because similar to what I'd done with Mein Kinder, what happened is I'd started doing stuff more like kind of droney stuff, which was guitar based, and I didn't want it, for some reason I didn't want it to be associated with the Mein Kinder stuff I'd been doing, so I just did it under the Fret moniker, and I'd been doing that kind of a good couple of years before we came together as a band. And then it was through MySpace as well, or YouTube. Might have been both. MySpace was certainly still around. Rob picked up on some of it, and he asked if we fancied doing a jam sometime, just to try working some out. And I think it probably took a little while before that actually got sorted. And then we just started, doing some practicing and stuff like that. And then he brought Cath into it because they'd done something for one of the Tusk festivals, I think, for Reese Chatham. And then, but we'd already, I think, had about 4 songs or something like that worked out before Cath came in. And then Daz was putting on the 10th anniversary of Distraction Records, and he asked if we wanted to play. And so we basically just got our shit together to play that show, and it kind of went from there. But I would say, like a lot of stuff when you do bands and that, you don't even know if you're going to get to your next gig, do you? After they've done the first one, you don't think to yourself, oh, I'm going to be doing this for 8 years or something like that. You just think, I get the first gig out of the way. Oh, that was all right. And then, we might do another.
Like sound-wise, what was you thinking of the process behind, being in a band again and playing in a band, and where you were going to take influence from, or did that just happen as well?
It kind of just happened. What I was trying to aim for, but I didn't get it, right? I was trying to aim for a kind of like Pussy Galore and Loop, like in Walk This Way, right? When they're on DMC and Aerosmith, right? And they're in the same. So you've got a practice room. You've got Pussy Galore in one, right? And you've got Loop in the other, and then probably like, I don't know, something like Godflesh or something like that in another. It was just some melding. Because I'd always, and I still do it now, I've always wanted to play like in like a Pussy Galore, Crampsy type sort of like, really trashy crap rock and roll band.
Yeah.
And that had been some of the early intention there. But then it's like when you might start off like that as when you're just doing stuff yourself, but when you bring other people into it, they all bring their bits, and then that just kind of changes things completely. But yeah, I would say every band I've kind of ever done, I've just been trying to mimic the records that I like listening to.
Yeah, that's cool. I think lastly, I was just interested because, you've got like a busy work life and family life, and how you manage to like your motivations to still keep being involved in music, like a band and label, and how you kind of balance that up and find the time for doing everything with the commitments that you have.
It's a bit of a juggling act. I mean, I'd be wrong if I said there haven't been times where I've thought, I should just jack all of this in. And I think I remember having a conversation with you once, and it was about being in bands. And I remember thinking it was absolute spot on, point it was saying. And I think this thing quite regularly as well. It's just like I start thinking to myself, I'm getting too old for this bloody lark, innit? Playing gigs and stuff like that, and just why do it? Just leave it to the young'uns. And I do think that sometimes as well, like, I think, why the hell does someone want to come and watch sort of like, this me trying to play my mid-80s records or whatever like that. I don't know, there's something there. It just keeps us doing it. And then I think as far as the label's concerned, is there have been a couple of times, I think, like probably when we went, when I was reaching my 50th release or something, I thought, oh yeah, this might be a good time to stop. And then when I was reaching the 100th one, I was thinking, oh yeah, this might be a good time to stop. Because I always remember when Big Black split up, I remember Steve Albini saying in an interview once, and it was probably quite tongue in cheek in that, but I remember him, someone was saying, oh, why are you splitting up? And he says, well, it's better to stop before you start sucking, you know what I mean? So and I thought that, but then the trouble is what happens is you get sent something and you'll listen to it and you'll think, oh yeah, that's great. And the great thing about putting tapes out and stuff is that you can do them in like really small quantities, so you can take risks and that, and it's not going to bankrupt you if no one's into it. And so I think to some degree, I kind of, I keep doing it because, well, I like doing it, and also because I still get sent some, decent music.